Welcome to the bow, Part 2B, as in, because Part A got too long. Our bow plates will be made from pieces of your 1/16 inch balsa stock, cut a good deal taller than the actual bow, and as wide as the stock itself, which is 3 inches. I use 1/16 balsa because it is flexible and you don't have to do any steaming. What's key is that after this piece is glued and dried to the beam, we'll flex glue it to the bow's deadwood. Simply flush glue the bow piece to the beam and allow it to fully dry. If you're worried about this thin wood in a collision, well, if you hit anything hard enough to puncture this bow, you are way out of this boat's element. The deadwood can be uneven, but that's why they invented wood filler. Don't try to make any of the curves until the area against the beam end is fully dried. Those other surfaces we'll get to in good time. Pins are your friend, but beware of making too many pinholes in a small area. It will sponge on you. Thin smears of glue work best. We'll use light finger pressure to stick the lower curve. The goal is not to try and glue the whole upper and lower edges at the same time. This is a waiting game. Thus, as the lower edge is being fastened, there should be a gap in the upper edge. Pin at an opposing angle to the wood's bend and stagger your pins. If you miss, move along a bit and try again. Otherwise, abreast pinholes will cause a crack. Allow the piece to dry completely. Once the lower edge is dry, use a toothpick to apply some glue to the upper edge. Work it in slightly. Instead of pinning here, I've always found that about a quarter drop of CA glue mixed with the residual wood glue and held in place for about 30 seconds with your fingers gets the best result. Just don't glue yourself to the boat. My trick for cutting away the excess is to start at the bottom and by eye make a knife mark that aligns with the opposite bottom's edge curve. Like this. Now flip the boat over and do the same on the top. This one looks off, but the camera's eye and my eye are not at the same angle. Now line up your small 45 along the 2 notches. Ignore the repaired area where I cracked the wood myself. Strike a line. I always freehand cut this one. Angle your blade to pretty much match the opposing edge's course. Just take your time. There's enough tension on this piece so that you don't have to cut all the way through. You can just score it halfway through and snap. A fairly good fit. Now simply attach the other side's piece using the exact same method. Here comes the step where you must use a new and very sharp X-Acto blade. We're going to shave off the excess. Always start with the bottom so you can get the hang of it. Take your time and keep the blade flat against the boat's bottom. Carefully but firmly saw away. If you make a gouge or 3 here, later sanding will cover it easily. Here's me trying to freehand cut away the excess overhang without a reference line, like I used to do 2 decades ago. I screwed it up in a big way. Here's what it should look like when I redid it using a reference line on our stunt boat. Back on our primary boat, you may recall that I said this overhang was important. Now we're going to make a single slice to free it from the rest of the excess. That way, when we cut it away, we won't chip it. This is the result. Do the same on the other side. These cuts do not have to be even or perfect, because most of it will be cut away in a future step. Now I'd advise to put another new, sharp blade into your hobby knife, because this cut needs to be good. Okay, mine came out fair, but it's good enough for some light sanding to make it much better. Now for the glamour curves. First, cut a strip of cardstock that is the same height as the forecastle cabin, as seen here. Through some experimentation, I found out that the best looking radius for this curve was the same as a US quarter, or a Canadian loonie for that matter. Trace that onto your cardstock template and cut out the curve. Now draw it onto your excess with a downward stroke being vertical at the edge of the Texas deck, as shown here. You can freehand cut that puppy and it will look great. May need some minor sanding, but everything does. And now you have a bow. If you messed up the stem cut like I did, some sanding will fix it, or you can simply add a cut water strip at the peak and wood fill around it. No one will ever know. Rounding out the bilge at this point is also good. In fact, it's a great morale builder. After watching these 2 bow videos, I think you know why it took so long to produce them. It is a real bugger shooting these videos while you build. Stacking the stern comes next. Be prepared for a lot of sawdust.